Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the two-man game right here on Claims Online. I'm Bob Ramsey, alongside my partner, Matt Rocchio. If I seem a little discombobulated, exhausted, fried, all the above, I am. Rock, how are you doing?
Rammer, I'm doing incredible. How about you pulling a little double duty? You had back-to-back games, and now you're doing a little podcasting here on Claims Online. Just the Iron Man out there right now for St. Louis Billikens talk.
This Iron Man's getting a little bit rusty.
I believe that's exactly a quote from Cal Ripken Jr.
I think it might be. So let's start, obviously, with the game at hand that just completed an hour or so ago, and that is in the Atlantic 10 tournament, where the Billikens upset number 4 seed St. Bonaventure, a team that had beaten the Billikens twice. And while the end scores were um, fairly close, not it didn't seem like they were close games. Travis Ford told me that very thing this morning. And so the Bills win by 1 in a crazy finish, but they advance to the semifinals of the Atlantic 10 tournament. Final score 57-56.
I mean, you put it best yourself in the broadcast of the game. I can't believe he missed both. How do you miss both? Just the fact that it came down to that situation was pretty incredible. It kind of highlighted, or it shouldn't take away from the fact that it was an incredible back and forth game. The entire matchup, and it shouldn't just be reduced to that. But man, how about just an incredible last few moments.
It really was. Yuri Collins and in particular Gibson Jimerson scored the points they needed, but turnovers were a problem. I'm sure we'll get to that. And then at the very end of the game, Bills had a 1-point lead, couldn't put it away. St. Bonaventure comes down. They get a shot to win or take the lead with just seconds remaining. They miss the shot. It caroms left off the side of the rim. Kyle Lofton, their tremendous point guard, and Jordan Nesbitt, they go to get the ball inexplicably in a game of two tough defensive veteran teams just beating on each other the whole game. Inexplicably, with 1.8 seconds left, they call a foul. Not on a shot,
Nope.
but two guys going for a rebound.
Mm-hmm.
As a side note, a friend of mine at the league, I don't need to mention his name, pretty high up in the Atlantic 10, in casual conversation after, that play, oh, that was a great call. And you know me, I think our listeners and viewers know me a little bit. I can't let that slide, can I?
Nope, can't let that slide. No, you cannot.
And I go, what? And I said, that's bullshit. And oh, what do you mean he went right through him? First of all, he didn't go right through him.
No.
Was there contact? Yes. But based on the way the game was being called, and despite complaints from both coaches throughout the game, in a so-called let them play style of game, you can't call that with a second left with the team a chance to win at the line. You cannot do it. Was there contact? Without question. But are we going to go back through every play in the game where there was egregious contact? And I don't really blame the officials. Hell, both teams would have shot 40 free throws. It was that physical. But then to call that late, okay, that's an aside. That's opinion stuff. The facts are their veteran leader and point guard, Kyle Lofton, goes to the free throw line with 1.8 left to shoot 2. They're down 1 to shoot 2. He's an 82% free throw shooter. It's over. It's over. Good night. Start the bus up. He missed 1. My partner Earl's already talking about, okay, can you set something up with 1.8 seconds left? Probably going to overtime, that's all good. And then somehow, some way, Kyle Lofton missed the second free throw. Now, add to that in my opinion, Jordan Nesbitt, who committed the foul, got down on himself, thought he had lost the game, and because of that, didn't block out the shooter, Lofton. Lofton goes and gets his own miss and tips it and missed. And the Billikens won. If you tried to say, hey, I got a script for an ending, I'd say that's stupid. It can't happen. The best free throw shooter on your team, a veteran, a leader, they've won league championships, a veteran, that doesn't happen. It can't happen. And as our friend John Rothstein might say, it's not anarchy, it's March.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? And it really was an unbelievable moment. And you got to give a lot of credit to the Bonnies. You know, their season playing pretty much just 5 guys the entire year, almost 40 full minutes. That's unbelievably incredible. It's, you know, it's kind of old school kind of basketball poetry in a heartbreaking way, in that it comes up on a free throw, which a lot of I'm sure guys would be like, well, when you have a lot of wear and tear on the legs throughout an entire season, those are the kind of little moments where those things crop up a little bit. It's, you know, it's a little cliche. I'm not gonna say 100% just attribute to that, but that's how it feels in the kind of moment. But it also was just an incredible game. That might have been maybe, I think, top 3 most impressive games from Gibson Jimerson this entire season. What he was doing out there was unbelievable. He was pulling up for threes in scenarios he hadn't previously. About midway through the second, when they get I don't know if it was a turnover or just a stop from the Bonnies, and they get it up court to Gibson on the fast break, and he catches it, and he does that step back 3. I don't know how Travis had a straight face after that 3, and I do not physically know how you couldn't react in some way to it. That was unbelievable.
Because Travis would have taken that shot.
Absolutely. But I mean,
the other one in the second half, where he came from down on the baseline, popped out to the left wing, a spinning 3. You're right. Those are shot he hasn't been taken. Here's one for you analysts out there. How about this? Everyone remembers he had that 5-game stretch in January where he averaged 24.8 points a game for 5 games. Then he got clocked in the head at St. Bonaventure. Related or not, he went into a 10-game slump. 10 games where he went from averaging 24.8 to 11 points a game. That's 10 games. That's a significant sample.
Oh God, yeah.
The last 3 games, today and the 2 previous, he's averaging 20 points a game again. How and why, I don't know, but Jimerson's back at just the right time.
Yeah, and for him, it wasn't just the shooting. One of the plays that stood out for me the most was they ran him around 2 or 3 screens and kind of this like deep looping action around the back. And when he caught it, he came around the screen and he threw a perfect post feed into Martin Linson, who had great position, kind of walled off and had an easy layup. It's such a little play. It's such a little play. But the fact that they can now bring the action to where Gibson Jimerson's coming off those screens and you expect him at any time to pull up and shoot the ball, or the other thing he's done, which is in that hard curling action, drive the ball. The fact that they were then able to turn it into Martin Linson gets position, Gibson sees that and feeds him perfectly. And I think people underestimate how much of a lost art the post pass, the entry pass is, and how often guards just completely blow it. And so that little play I thought was just a beautiful microcosm of a St. Louis team that started clicking in that LaSalle game and kept it going within that 24, 36-hour window. They're clearly feeling something ever since they touched down in D.C., and if they can keep that going, it's going to be interesting against Davidson.
Yeah, Rocc, I think you're right about that. And a couple other moments. Was it the last bucket for the Bills? That baseline right pull-up jumper from Jimerson? Was that I think that was the last pass.
That was the eventual game winner.
What a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
And the feel for the moment to get to that particular spot where he could get a shot off. Just
Ooh,
big time stuff.
Yeah, feels the right word for it. And again, talking about those kind of post-entry passes, you obviously got to give a lot of credit to the guards, but also Francis Okoro just being a tone setter out the gate right now with his post scoring. It's not something that I ever could have factored into the equation for how this team was going to win games. But him scoring early has become almost secondary to Yuri Collins scoring early as something that tells me this is going to be a game SLU has a chance to win. And Yuri Collins obviously didn't score early this game. The entire first half was pretty much just Francis Okoro, Gibson, Jimerson, and Fred Thatch. But Francis Okoro, I mean, the way he just knocks down a couple hook shots in the first 4 or 5 possessions, and how that just gets things rolling for this offense, it's been a huge thing. It's one of those, we sometimes forget, about the play calling aspect, from the bench. In basketball, we always think about the players running their offense, but I gotta think that there has been an impetus from the coaching staff. Let's feed Francis early because it opens up the offense completely, and I think today was another great example of that.
Another double-double for Okoro. And you think back to the first games of the season, everyone saw that he had ability. And the increments are so slow. If you're real, it's like when you got a kid and they're growing, you don't know. Then you go away for a couple of weeks and you come back and it looks like your kid grew a foot. And that's how it is with Okoro. When you're there every day, you don't notice, but then you look, and just about every game, he just climbs a little bit, and gets better and better. He was so good today. He dominated Oshuniyi. Oshuniyi, who is the defensive player of the year in the conference. Some would argue the best big man in the conference. He was dominated by Okoro.
Yeah, and that's a huge matchup. And listen, that's something we talked about these last 2 weeks was, can there be a moment when the St. Louis big men dominated a game like we knew they could? Could we finally see that Linson Okoro combination start to really take advantage of teams like we saw in the non-conference schedule? And this was really one of the first conference games we've seen the entire year of that happening. And we didn't get to talk about it yesterday because we're doing the podcast today on Friday, but also he didn't have a huge game today, but a big credit to DeAndre Jones in that LaSalle game, finally just having a second game in a row where he was just clicking in every way. He was the glue guy in the same way that Fred Thatch has been for so much of the season. The way that the way that these older players like DeAndre Jones, Fred Thatch, and the way that some of these younger players, Francis Okoro, Gibson Jimerson, Jordan Nesbitt, I know we talked about his flub, but he had some more incredible moments where you just have to, you just want the replay to run because of the dunk or the rebound. Heck, TJ Hargrove stepped up and had a couple of huge plays in these last 2 games. It's just the way that this entire depth of St. Louis has stepped up. Everything we thought had to go the way it needed to beat a team like St. Bonaventure after 2 losses. It went exactly that way, and now obviously you got to look forward to the toughest game on your schedule so far this year potentially.
Before we get to that, 2 other points I want to run by you. It wasn't a perfect game by the Billikens. 17 turnovers ain't going to get it done.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It allowed 7 additional shots for St. Bonaventure. 7 additional shots. St. Bonaventure would love to play this game again right now because they know they didn't take advantage as well as they should. One more thing. What is your position on plus minus in basketball?
I mean, it's good. It's a fine stat, but don't overreact to it too much. It tells you certain things.
That's what I thought too. Well, here's what it doesn't tell me. On the box score I'm looking at, Jordan Nesbitt was the highest plus minus on the team, +7, while he goes 0 for 8 from the floor. I don't know. And then DeAndre Jones, who you just praised, and I agree with you 100%, -8, the worst on it. I just don't know how much I buy it.
Yeah, I mean, what I see right,
a real.
What I see is one guy who plays with the starters that carried the team, and another guy who was carrying some bench units, which didn't have a very good game. And I think that's kind of probably a big factor in those guys being such a flip, because while Nesbitt had his moments, I would argue that DeAndre Jones played just as well, if not a better, in team game, if you will.
So the Billikens win 57-56. SLU is now 22-10 on the season, and they'll play in one of the semifinal games tomorrow against a team that absolutely demoralized them earlier in the year at Davidson, the Davidson Wildcats.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and in fact, one of the biggest things you mentioned here in this game against the Bonnies was turnovers. That's the one problem they didn't have against Davidson, yet they still lost by about 20 points. And so I think the bigger thing is, if you remember that Davidson game, it felt like they couldn't miss anything. That first half especially. And they couldn't. Every shot they were putting up went down. And so I think the biggest difference here is, one, they're not going to hit all the open shots they hit. But the question is, has the SLU defense improved to the point where Davidson can't get the open shots they got? If you watch them play Fordham, their ball movement eviscerated Fordham. They were getting open jumpers every single possession, especially in the second half against Fordham. It was domination. And so I think the answer to the question is yes. St. Louis has made a defensive jump since they played Davidson. And if they can continue that along with the offense we've seen here in these last two games, then it's going to be a closer game. But they have to, in every way, shape, or form, now come out after two games in 2 days, still have fresh legs, and find a way to run Davidson off the three-point line as much as they can, and not let them get those open jumpers that they feasted on so much, that they feasted on against St. Louis last time. So, guys like Jordan Nesbitt, who had bad offensive games against St. Bonaventure, they got to shake it off and understand that this is all about how they can play defensively, because you got destroyed last game defensively. And I know a lot of people want to point out that St. Louis didn't even score 60 that game, but you were out of that game because of your defense, and you can't let that happen again. I was very impressed with the post defense and the interior defense today, and how they were stopping cutters, stopping drivers, and things like that. I thought it's one of the better games they had against a good St. Bonaventure team that destroyed them in the paint in really the first of those two matchups, but a little bit in the second matchup. And so can they continue those strides and those improvements into the Davidson game? That's going to be the biggest question.
100%. I agree completely. I talked to bracketologist Joe Lenardi. He believes that the league is wide open, that any of the remaining teams could win it. UMass is playing right now. I don't think they can, but VCU and Richmond will play in just a little while. I'm going to go back to the arena and watch that game. Anybody can win it, but I don't think anybody can lose in the championship game and still get into the NCAA tournament, based on what the bracketology people are telling me. I hope I'm wrong. I really believe the level of play in the Atlantic 10 is worthy of multiple bids, but based on what people are telling me, it doesn't look like it'll happen.
Yeah, it looks like it's been trending that way for really the last month or so, and it's just, Travis talked about it too. Some of the guys in the A10 just didn't get the non-conference wins that they were expecting, and then there was a little bit of a cannibal kind of thing going on here with the A10. VCU obviously didn't have the season they were expected to have. I think maybe even Richmond weren't as good as people expected them to be, and so just came down a little bit. And we talked about that at the beginning of the year. This could have been, if everything breaks that way, I think this could have been a 2 or even a 3 bid season for the A10, but it broke kind of a perfect storm negatively for it to just be a 1 bid team. But I think you're right. Whatever team wins this tournament, that's the A10 team we're talking about come tourney time.
Yeah, the teams that had the 2 best non-conference schedules to get in, I think, were SLU and Dayton, and they both scuffled in November for various reasons. That's just the way it goes sometimes. The one other thing I wanted to say was, I was told unofficially that by Friday night, by tonight, maybe even by now, that the NCAA selection committee already has their bracket filled out, and it takes something outrageous on Saturday to happen for them to change it. So I believe my source. I think that's probably true. So even if somebody makes a run, and it's probably not going to change much. I think it's pretty much a phrase I hate, is what it is.
Yeah, and before we get out of here, I do want to point out John Rothstein, who we already mentioned here on the pod, about 44 minutes ago, right before we got started, he reported that he has sources saying that Konzo Martin is going to be out at Missouri. I think that
Boy,
move, I think it makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, we all, he's such an incredible guy, and I know that's become cliche to say, but because it's true. But even today, his quotes yesterday, he's a guy who he understands and he truly believes that he's not supposed to be here, considering where he came from. And so he's not going to let these things weigh on him. He's not going to get too caught up in whether or not, he's winning 20 games or 18, whether or not he's getting this recruit or that recruit. He's a guy who is so beautifully happy with where he is in his life, even if his professional things aren't going exactly how he wants to. And you got to respect that. I know there's some fans who are like, who kind of see it kind of like passe or something like that. I actually love it. I think there's a low-key kind of like passion within that kind of perspective of, I don't need this big time. I got a life that I built through my hard work. And, people pointed out his college career. He's a guy who took 7 3-pointers and he went 0 for 7 his first 2 years. And then his junior year, he takes 400 and he hits it at a 45% clip. I mean, he's done so much that he's not, and so some people didn't like that attitude. I loved that attitude, and I love that he started that way, and that the entire year, when all anyone wanted to talk about was, "Are you going to get fired? How do you feel about this?" All he ever wanted to say was, "I'm happy with what I've done here, and I'll be happy if that's what happens." And so a lot of respect to Konzo Martin, but at the same time, when you look at St. Louis, a lot of the conversation, or when you look at Mizzou, a lot of the conversation was about the money. But when you look at the buyout and how those things were going to work and how much money they were going to have left on the contract, it's either going to be a $6 million buyout this year, or at the end of next season it was going to be, I think, a $4 million buyout and then $2 million left on the contract they were going to have to buy out. So it was going to be $6 million really either way, and that's what I think when you talk about the economics of the decision, I think that's kind of what changed, is when everyone kind of realized it's $6 million this year or next year, and if it's next year, that's just one more year, and Desiree Reed-Francois probably just can't sustain that one more season.
And then to get to, other than the obvious, the record, but how did they get to that record? And I think there is a level of coaching in Division I that didn't adapt quickly enough to the transfer portal, and I think it's run a couple of coaches out of the game, and I think it's cost some guys their job. My opinion is, and if Konzo would tell me I'm wrong about this, I would defer to him. I respect him that much, but I think he got blindsided by all the defection, that the ease of the transfer portal, as I said, blindsided him, kind of took him out at the knees, and he and his staff weren't able to recover and use the transfer portal as a weapon to replenish what they lost. And it ultimately caused the demise. And Konzo Martin can coach people and he can recruit, but his experience in the transfer portal was a disaster.
No,
And
because
that's
well, you just don't get the. I mean, he's so. It's hard not to want to run through a brick wall for the guy. And so when you don't have those long recruiting relationships, I got to imagine a guy like him just kind of loses a little bit of that edge when it comes to team building.
Yeah. And I think just understanding and where to get guys out of the portal and how to get them. I don't know how to get them. Don't ask me, but there's too much talent in the world to not have talent. Mm-hmm. It's just not an excuse. You got to have talent. And it caught him. And I'm sad for him because I really respect him, one, and two, I really like him. So I'm bummed out about that.
Yeah, absolutely. This brings me into my last point about college basketball and just basketball overall. Offensive and defensive coordinators should be a thing in basketball. I don't see why it's not. It makes too much sense. We should have it. It should be more sectioned off, because I think you give a guy like Konzo like an offensive coordinator, a guy who just his job is just when the timeout happens, he's the one with the clipboard 100% of the time. I'm sure they have guys obviously who help them out, but I want to see something more dedicated. Guys like and on the other side, a guy like Konzo. If you don't want him to be a head coach, maybe you can't figure out the recruiting. Bring him in to coach your defense. You will absolutely start shutting teams down more than you have been.
But then you get rid of the old adage, oh, Matt Rocc, he's a great coach. He can take his'n and beat your'n and take your'n and beat his'n.
I think if we lose more catchphrases in that accent, we'll all be better off.
Oh, hey, real quick. At our house, Selection Sunday's a holiday. We gather around the TV. It's a big deal. We get ready to fill in brackets. It really is a big deal. What about for you?
Oh, I love Selection Sunday, especially now. I used to be when I was younger. I used to be a multiple bracket person, but now I'm very stoically. I have my one bracket. I pour over it. I put that bracket into all my different pools. It's my one bracket. I go into a little pool with my parents that we've been doing since I was like 12 every year. So yeah, I absolutely love Selection Sunday. It's going to be an absolute blast. There's nothing better than picking your 12 versus 5 matchups. Those are the best.
Well, that's what we'll do when we reconvene next week. Got anything on the NBA before we go?
I mean, it's
just a short one tonight.
The basketball weekend is incredible. I'm not going to go too much into it. It's just that this talking about it, Selection Sunday, it's a holiday. It's a basketball holiday, and you're going to get right out of the gate at noon. You get Brooklyn, New York on Sunday. So I mean, it rolls you right in. You get Boston, Dallas a little bit later, and then that kind of rolls you into the late afternoon when you're going to get to watch the actual selection show. So Sunday you have great games. On Saturday, tomorrow you have Golden State versus Milwaukee at 7:30 p.m. That is in prime time. It's on ABC. You can watch that no matter where you are. That matchup is going to be incredible. And then tonight, a little bit later, after you watch some Richmond, it's a little bit more A-10 basketball. Later on tonight, Miami and Cleveland are playing. I'm a little bit down on Cleveland right now because they lost Jared Allen, but they're still going to be a playoff team. I'm still sticking to the fact that the East is going to be watchable the entire round of the playoffs. So right there, great NBA games the entire weekend. So many college basketball games. It's a basketball holiday, Rammer. I've been loving it so much, and I can't wait for another couple days of it.
Well, have a cocktail. I don't know what it's not Cinco de Mayo, so it's not margaritas. I don't know what we'll have. We got to come up with something.
I already made the sandwich.
That's why you're the best. That's why you're my partner. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, we'll get together next week. We'll talk brackets. We'll talk NBA when the two-man game returns. Don't forget the Billikens play Davidson tomorrow in the A-10 semifinals. Rocc, have a great weekend.
You too, Rammer. Thanks so much.
That's Matt Rocc. I'm Bob Ramsey. It's the two-man game right here on Claims Online.
St. Louis Acura is the only Acura dealer in the nation to win the Precision Team Award for 30 years. How do we do it? By making you, our customers, our number one priority. As others increase their fees and take advantage of limited inventory, we keep our prices low because we remain committed to becoming better than ever and treating you as we want to be treated. We want you coming back and sending your friends and family to a veteran-owned, family-based business you can trust. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.